So good morning, everyone. My name's Carrie Ramsey, and I'm the project manager for the We Can project at Queen's University, which is actually funded by FedDev Ontario through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, which some of you may have heard of. So it's my honor and thrill to have Julie Sweeney today, who is joining us to deliver this all-important session, I think, on resilience, which right now is so crucial for all of us. Just before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes is that we have muted your microphones just for obvious reasons. I'm sure at this point we can all appreciate all of the background noise that happens, whether or not we realize it's happening sometimes in our households. So I have put you on mute. However, during the session, you have access to the chat button, which is in the bottom center of your screen. And just so that you can try it out right now, just to make sure that it's working, why don't you just pop a note in there, let us know where you're connecting from, geographically perhaps, and then if you have a business and you're a woman entrepreneur and you just want to let us know the name of your business, we would love to see that in the chat as well. And while you're doing that, I will acknowledge that I am connecting to this session today from Belleville, Ontario, Canada. And for those of you who may know this area, we are located on the banks of the Moira River, where my family and I are privileged to live, work, and play on the Indigenous territory, which is a traditional hunting, fishing, and gathering territory of the First Nations. And it is actually, it's a beautiful sunny day today. And I don't know about you folks, but when the sun comes out, we head out on multiple walks a day now that we are all sort of housebound. And right now, spending some time in nature and connecting with what I like to think the nature that has been here, you know, for generations before us is actually so soothing and therapeutic. I know we're talking about self-care today, and for me, that's one of the things that I love to do. And I'm just so grateful to be able to do it here on this traditional territory. So I definitely want to acknowledge that as we get started today. So without further ado, I don't want to steal any more of her time. Julie Sweeney is here to present to us. She will give us a little bit of her background, but I do want to thank you all for coming. We know that it's easy to register for a workshop and not show up. So I think you should give yourselves a high five that you are spending 90 minutes on your own, you know, just investing in yourselves, whether you have a business, whether you're going to start a business, or just for your own mental health right now. I'm going to duck out because we've got a lot of people waiting in the waiting room. So I'm going to be facilitating behind the scenes. If you have questions as we go, Julie will probably cover this, but the chat button is there for you right now. We will have a Q&A a little bit later on, but Julie, for now, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carrie. Hello, everyone. I don't know what you can see. This is my first of many that are coming up presentations, so I'm really excited to be here and be sharing with you a topic that is very, very close to my heart. You'll hear today a bit of my story intermingled with a whole bunch of stuff that hopefully will help you as well. And I am here from Frankfurt, Ontario, so just outside of Belleville, along the Trent River. So that, again, is a very beautiful location. Originally, I'm actually from Vancouver Island, so I'm not sure if anybody is reaching out from there today. It's pretty early for a workshop, 7 a.m., but if you are from the West Coast, shout out to you guys as well for showing up possibly in your pajamas. I was going to do a poll and see how many people are in their pajamas, or at least half, because to be fair, I'm top half ready and bottom half comfy. Anybody else? Yeah, right? Let's just put that out there. If I stand up, it's comfy pants. All right. So now I have to learn how to advance my screen. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about who I am. One of the things that I think is really, really important to start off is acknowledging my privilege. So for me, my privileges are that I am white, I'm able-bodied passing, which means most of the time I look like I'm able-bodied. However, I do struggle with a few chronic illnesses. I'm cisgender, heterosexual. I have access to post-secondary education, which is a huge privilege for me, and I have financial stability. So acknowledging those for me just means that I come from a place of privilege when I do these type of talks, and understand that not everybody is in the same place as me. So please understand that that is where my beginning of this all comes from. That is my professional headshot there in the middle from when I first cut off all my hair, but hadn't yet quite gone all natural color yet. So that is, I had gone from long purple hair to short pixie cut to start going back to natural 2 years ago. For the professional me, I have a sensitive computer. So for the professional me, I'm a counselor in private practice here in Frankfurt, but also virtually all over Canada and in other parts of the world as well. I am a yoga teacher in Frankfurt and right now actually virtually, as well as in Trenton at Get Yoga. I am an instructor at Loyalist College in the social service worker program, which I absolutely love, but I'm also the clinical placement coordinator for nursing, PSW, and practical nursing at Loyalist College. And just because, you know, we don't always have enough to do, I am also in a degree program at Guelph Humber that I will graduate from in April 2021. So that's a little bit about me and maybe why I need some resilience. And today's workshop, the reason you're all here, you know, I've been building resilience for quite some time, and I'm going to take you through some of that, but this is just a little bit about what we're going to look at today. And there's slides and you can get the slides, but to be fair, it's really this conversation where I connect the dots for you that I think is more important than any slides that I might share. So as we go through each of these different places and do these different things, I just really encourage you to take what you need and leave what you don't. You don't need to adopt everything I suggest. You don't need to, you might not even need it in your life right now. You might need it for somebody else. You might need it down the road. I learned about self-care when I was 25 years old and applied it in my early 30s. So there's lots of time to apply what you need. And so today we're just going to talk about developing a healthy relationship with success, whatever that looks like to you, whether you have your own business or you're in business with somebody else, or you work for a corporation or you don't work. We still need a healthy relationship with success because it isn't necessarily tied to a job or a career or a business. We want to trust our intuition. So how do we start to believe in ourselves? And then the hardest work is probably in this next one where we try to become aware of our personal roadblocks. And let me tell you, this is probably where we start and we spend a lot of our time in our lives because these are the things that we set up ourselves or others have set up for us that we really need to separate from so that we can have the impact we're looking to have in the world. And then, of course, I'm going to leave you with my absolute favorite piece, which is creating a consistent self-care practice. And we're looking at that holistically, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical aspects of ourselves, because that's the only way this works, is if we're nice and balanced. So for those of you who are interested in knowing everything that's coming up, this is what you're in for. So if you like, you can feel free to go ahead and grab a pen and paper. There's going to be lots of questions for you to consider. And again, this might be a good reason to get the slides later on, is to go back to some of these questions. If you don't want to stop and you just want to listen, please feel free to do that. Reach out to get them so that you can go back to some of these questions. I tried to be as concise and thoughtful with each of the questions as I could. And throughout, I know Carrie is monitoring the chat. So if you have a question and you don't want to wait till the end, please feel free to say, can I ask this now? And Carrie will interrupt me. I totally don't mind that. I am looking at my screen. I'm not looking at the chat and I'm not looking at faces. So I can't see your amazing reactions, which is one of the things that really does help me present well. So hopefully for those of you who see me present before, when I have reactions, this is similar, but I can't guarantee that. So moving forward, I'm sure most of us have a bit of an understanding of what resilience is. And you know, the Merriam-Webster dictionary says it's the ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And let me tell you, in the last couple of months, we have been adapting to change like no other time in my 42 years of life. So we are in the height of learning what being resilient can look like. my mom actually sent me this quote here on the side from Mr. Rogers the other day, and I had to incorporate it because I just felt that one of the things that resilience gives us is the ability to fall short of what we expect for ourselves and be okay with that, right? So we can only do the best we can. And one of the things that I want to say as we get further into this conversation is this: I'm not perfect. I still have to be very, very intentional about how I am resilient. I do not slack on my self-care consistently. I consistently do my self-care. However, that doesn't mean that my life is perfect. It doesn't mean that I am perfectly resilient at all times. But what it does mean is that years ago, before I knew any of this, before I was consistent with my self-care, I would take weeks to bounce back, sometimes months. And now it's, a couple of days, a couple of hours, depending on the situation. And one thing that I really, really want to say is this: the more our heart is in something, the more we're going to come up against needing to be resilient. So if it's in your business, if it's in your family, if it's in both, if it's whatever it's in, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you love, you're going to need some resilience, because life is life and it's going to do what it does. And we're going to have things like this pandemic that challenge us to find resilience within ourselves. So I just want to put that out there, that those things that we care about the most is probably where you're going to see the need for resilience the most. I am the mom of a teenager, and so I find that a lot of my resilience right now comes in being a parent. So there is that. I'm a military spouse, so there's a lot of resilience built into that. I am a business owner. I own two businesses essentially, and I've been a business owner since my early 20s. So there's been a lot of resilience pieces throughout my life. And it is important to our professional and our personal lives. Resilience gives us the ability to commit to goals because we're okay if we fail. We think a bit more positively when we're feeling resilient. I think when we're feeling not resilient, when we're feeling taken down, we're not thinking positively. So when we start to look at how to become resilient, how to access resiliency, really, we can focus on what we can control. And this is one of the things with the pandemic right now as well, is there's a lot we can't control. There's a lot that no one can control. So we need to look at what can we do, what can we control, and we can control our resiliency in a number of different ways. So my first question for you all, just to stop and take a pause to think about, is in this, of the 6 areas shown, what is the area you most succeed at? Are you really good at committing to goals, or not blaming yourself when things don't work out? Or are you fantastic at focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you can't? So that's the first thing. What do you succeed at? What is something that you can say, yes, in that area, I am definitely resilient? Just take a moment, maybe even if you have a pen and paper, write that down, drop it in the chat. Again, I can't see that, but that's okay, I'll see it after. And then I want you to stop and think, what area or areas need more attention and why? So we always want to make sure that we're looking at both sides, right? We want to know where we're successful, what we can do. So a strength-based lens. What are our strengths with resiliency? And what area do we need more attention? And I think one of the benefits, and I use that word lightly and maybe with air quotes, of the pandemic, it has shown people what areas they are successful in and what areas need attention. I definitely, I don't blame myself for a pandemic or what's happened. I've pivoted in a way that was simple for me because I had set up my life for that ability. focusing on what I can control is literally a daily task for me. So in as much as I know what I can control and I know what I can't control, it doesn't mean that I'm not going, I wish I could control that. So we need to see that focusing on what we can control is pretty vital. And it's something that I practice daily, kind of like yoga. It's a control focus, a control practice. So just take a moment with that. There is a link down at the bottom of this slide, and you can go in and look a little bit deeper. I did use a lot of different resources to pull together what I thought would give us 90 minutes of really good content. So there's a lot further you can all dig into this concept, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I can see that the chat is blowing up, and I'm so excited for that. It means that you guys are maybe coming up with some really great ideas. So let me show you a little story. This is snippets of my resiliency. And I say snippets because this is the only thing I could find. To be fair, Facebook didn't come until 2007. So anything prior to 2007, I have these kind of grainy photos of. So let me just start over with that little girl in that head wrap over there. When I was about 3 years old, I fell off a picnic table and I sliced my ear. I guess that's what they do in 1981 for a ear cut, is they wrapped my entire head. So my first snippet of reality, or resiliency, sorry, is this little me at 3 years old. And, you know, we have to remember that resiliency comes in a lot of different ways. So there's another part up here on the top level. You'll see 2 wedding dresses and 2 different weddings. So the first wedding dress there is my first wedding when I was 24. And then the next picture is me pregnant. And then the next picture is my next wedding in 2004. Did I say 2004 in the first one? So when I was 24 in 2002, then I was pregnant in 2003, and then I got remarried to someone else in 2004. And that's my little girl there. And it takes a lot of resiliency to change your life. And in 2 years, I changed a lot of things in my life. I had a first husband. I had a baby daddy, because it is not my first husband. And I had a second husband, again, not the biological father of my daughter. And I say this without any shame, because I've dealt with that. But it does take a lot of resiliency to have a life that is so out of context from what you expected that resiliency does matter. Now, to be fair, I was not resilient through all of this. I have been able to go back and look at, I wasn't intentionally resilient. I definitely was resilient, but I wasn't intentional about it. So understanding that life events impact our resiliency. Down at the bottom there, you'll see a couple of different military pictures. The bottom left there is of my husband in Afghanistan. And in 2009, between 2008 and 2009, I was living in Vancouver, Vancouver Island, and he was either in Quebec training for months, or he was in Afghanistan. And so I was at home with a 4-year-old and working on being resilient. It was one of the most difficult periods of my life, because there was little contact. He wasn't in Kandahar. He was a couple of forward operating bases or FOBs away from that. So communication was very, very slim. What I found within myself was that I need support. Part of my resiliency plan is to have support. So when he was in Afghanistan, I didn't have a lot of that, and my mental health really suffered. So even though I had to be resilient, again, it wasn't intentional. The next picture there is my very first business. I had a home-based business for a number of years. I was a sales director. I had a couple of cars. I did sort of the highfalutin part of that job. And then in 2010, I gave it up. I gave my car back. I disassociated myself because it wasn't the path that I was meant to be on. And that's fine. I think that we have to understand when we're done with something, which is another really important part of resiliency, right? Is not focusing on the negatives, but the positives. So from there, I went back to school a couple of different times, became a counselor, and moved on with my life. So, but that was a great 10, 15 years of my life that I was in that business doing what I was doing there. But it took a lot of resiliency to step back from something that was a really big part of my life. Next picture there is the only picture I could find of us moving to Ontario in 2014. So in 2014, we were transferred from Vancouver Island because my husband changed trades. And this is my daughter looking in our house for the first time as we were about to move in. And let me tell you, moving across country, away from your family who you have been around for the last 35 years, within 3 hours of them, is hard. And this probably propelled me to really dig into my resiliency, mostly because we didn't have snow on Vancouver Island the way that we have snow here. We didn't have mosquitoes on Vancouver Island the way we have mosquitoes here. I had to learn a lot over 4 seasons that I've never had to learn before. I had to buy winter boots. But, you know, all joking aside, moving is a big part. So in 12 years, if you look from the first wedding photo, in 12 years, I had been married twice, had a baby, gone through a very large deployment, left my home-based business, and moved across country. And 12 years seems like a long time, but when I look back on these pictures, it doesn't feel like very long. And then that last picture there is just a really nice photo of me and my husband. He's actually changed trades again since that photo. So we have been Navy, Air Force, and now he is Army. And we had some free tickets to a game. But it does take resilience every day to be a military spouse, in my opinion. So any military spouses or people who work with the military that are here, just know that this is a really big part of what we do every day. So again, like I said, this is snippets of resiliency. These are sort of some big moments in my life. There are little moments throughout my life that I choose resiliency as well. And I want you to understand that even if you haven't gone through anything like this, you still need resiliency. And this just shows one of my businesses, but I have had my own private practice since 2013. I've been a yoga teacher, which is technically my own business, since 2018 or 17. I'm not really sure anymore. Time just seems to be inconsequential right now sometimes. So this is a bit of my story so you understand where I'm coming from when I talk about some of this stuff. When I look down, it's because I'm looking at the time, making sure we are in line. So how do we develop a healthy relationship with success? We need to acknowledge our fear of failure. And this question is something that will help you reveal your relationship with fear and success. What do you think is worse? The fear of failing or never trying? I'm going to pause. I'm going to let you just take a moment. What is worse? The fear of failing or never trying? So, oh, there goes the chat again. Good. Here's the thing, guys. For a long time in my life, the fear of failing was way worse than never trying. Because if you never try, you never fail. But if you never try, nothing changes. So, a lot of times when we have a fear of failing in one area of life, we might not in another area of our life. So again, it can depend. I hear that from a lot of clients. Well, that question's fine, but it depends, right? What we're really passionate about, sometimes it's easier to not try because then we won't fail. John Maxwell wrote a fantastic book called Failing Forward. And this harkens back to my home-based business days. And we read a lot of John Maxwell when I was a sales director with them. And that was pretty amazing. But so it stuck with me that failing forward is the ability to get back up after you've been knocked down, learn from your mistake, and move forward in a better direction. And, you know, when we have a ability to fail forward, then the fear goes away, or at least it gets a little quieter. I also want to know, how do you define success in your life? What does that look like? Is it based on your business? Is it based on your family structure? Is it based on your events in your life? What's it based on? How do you define success in your life? What does it mean to you? This is not a 2-second, I'm going to pause and you're going to answer this question. This is something that I really encourage you to take a moment when we're done with this, when you're still kind of fired up by this excitement, and think, how do I define success? Because without a focus, we can't get anywhere. So for me, I define success as being content and living a life filled with joy. That's success, because that is personal and professional. It allows me to leave when things are unhealthy in a job or with a friendship. It allows me to not define myself by numbers in any area of my life, which is so important to me. And then we need to rethink setbacks. You know, this one, you develop resilience out of setbacks. We develop resilience when we fail. If life was peachy keen our entire life, why would we need to develop resilience? We would probably just either have it or not need it. But we need to look at, how do we look at setbacks? Are we empowered by them? Or do they cause fear? And I encourage you to see setbacks as empowering. To feel like you tried, something happened, and now you get to choose again and try again. And that's empowering. That is being resilient. And of course, I had to stick in something on Brene Brown because she's, in my mind, one of the most brilliant researchers that we have out there, especially doing shame research. If you have any struggles with shame in your life, she is one of the top shame researchers who can really guide you inwards into looking at how shame plays a part in resilience. And I spent a lot of my life waiting to be perfect to walk into the arena. And when I changed that relationship with myself, I was able to no longer sacrifice opportunities that I really wanted to partake in, but didn't feel good enough. So I started this journey in 2013. So it's not something that's been long instilled in my life. It is something that is relatively new. I mean, 7 years, right? Is not a long time to be in a position to create such big change. So, I mean, it'd be great if you left this workshop and decided to change your life in positive ways and had it done tomorrow. But is it unrealistic? Most likely. I believe that it is a journey, and there really is no destination, because we can always improve. We can always try something different. We're always going to encounter setbacks if we are putting ourselves out in the world. So I just really want you to look at this quote as understanding that you don't need to be perfect to step into the arena of whatever it is you are trying to step into. And then there's trusting the intuition. So there's a lot of question over here on the one side of the screen. So let's just go to the infographic there. 4 steps to following your intuition. Be present. You need to be in your life and be present. So another way that I look at that is being intentional. You need to show up for your life. You need to put yourself in your planner, on your day timer, anything. So be present, be there completely. Listen. Let go of thinking and listen. What do you want? Allow and let yourself feel. You know, I think sometimes women are told we're too emotional or we're leading from emotion. we need to let ourselves feel. We don't need to let it take us over or overwhelm us, but we need to be in tune with our emotions. And then we need to respond to what's happening and act, right? If we feel that there is something we need to do, somewhere we need to go, we need to follow that intuition. We need to be present, listen, allow, and then act. Our tuition matters. Everything about our intuition is either going to be suppressed if we allow it, or it's going to be expressed. So which do you prefer, right? Okay. So just let that sink in. And then let's go over to these questions. And let me tell you, I tried very hard to get the slides, the picture with the little lines so that you could follow along really succinctly, but I could not figure it out. So I apologize for that. And hopefully, if you're choosing to follow along with the questions, that you have a pen and paper or you request the slides later. I want to know, do you believe that you have the power to survive the worst? And I put the worst because I don't know what that is for you. There are so many different concepts of what the worst may be. Do you believe you have the power to survive? Do you believe you have the ability to recover? Do you believe you have the will to pivot, change, or create something new? Do you believe in your intuition? When I think about all the times I didn't listen to my intuition, I can think about times I have had to build resilience. We honestly know what we need to know. We know what we need to do. It is that number 4 over there, that respond to what's happening, that can be the hardest part. How do we respond to what's happening when it challenges our relationships, when it challenges our business, our employment, our location, our health? How do we do that? That is a difficult question. And what I think we need to look at is back to that first question. Do you believe that you have the power to survive the worst? Do you have a support team in place? Do you have people who care about you? Do you care about you? Forget everybody else. Do you care about yourself? Do you believe you are worthy of recovering from things that are a struggle for you, or things that have happened to you, or anything else that is part of your life? Do you believe you are worthy of that? That is a big part of our intuition, is being connected to ourselves. And again, as women, we often find ourselves disconnected from who we are and what we have to offer. We are not second-class citizens. We are powerful, and our intuition matters. So I ask again, do you believe in your intuition? Do you believe you know what is best for you, even if it's hard to act? Sometimes the act takes a little bit longer. Again, there is a link there at the bottom that you can go and dig in a little bit further into this, because I think it's really, really important. It is hard to be resilient when you're disconnected from who you are. Okay, becoming aware of your roadblocks or your setbacks. Oh, okay. Self-deprecating beliefs. As a counselor, as someone who listens to stories, as someone who has a story, I believe that this one is one that holds us back all too often. What are you telling yourself, and whose voice is it? Is it a parent, a grandparent, a teacher from days gone by, a sibling? Is it positive? Is it negative? We need to know what those tapes in our head are saying. Are they saying you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're not smart enough, you're not talented enough, you don't, for me a long time it was, you're so scared of networking that you'll never be good at having your own business. Luckily, I have some great networking mentors, one of whom is on this today, who shows me the power behind being okay with, networking. But I really want you to take a step back and think, what are the thoughts that I'm having about myself? Again, if you are not in tune with yourself and you're having self-deprecating beliefs or struggling with old tapes in your head, it's going to be a big roadblock in building resilience in your life. Because sometimes it's just easier to believe what you've been told, even if it is rotting you to the core. I encourage you to explore this. I encourage you to explore this with someone, with a professional, because again, this is a can be a very difficult conversation to understand what we're saying to ourselves. Next is time. Your relation to it and your belief about it. Do you believe that you don't have enough time? I know I have, and yet let me tell you, I have seen a lot of Netflix shows. I've watched so much Netflix that they've asked me if I'm still watching, which I feel judged about. But I've said to myself over the years, I just don't have enough time. And when I switched that to, I get to choose how I prioritize my time, I took that power back. It is no longer a roadblock for me. I choose Netflix, or I choose my schoolwork, or I choose my job, or I choose my networking. I choose all of that because my relation to time and my belief about it is I have enough of it. It's what I choose to do with it. Now, I have one teenage daughter who pretty much keeps to herself, an independent husband. So I don't have roadblocks around time that involve my family necessarily. And you might. And so when you look at your relation to it and your beliefs about it, you need to understand it from your point of view, from your perspective, from your life challenges or events, or from what you learned growing up. I also, for time for me is if you're on time, you're late. My dad was military as well. And, if you're half hour early, you're on time. And if you're 15 minutes, if you're 30 minutes early, you're early. If you're 15 minutes early, you're on time. And if you're on time, you're late. That was how he described it to me. And I worked for him for a number of years at a convenience store after he retired. So that was sort of drilled into me. But I do believe for myself, that is an important aspect of my relationship to time. It also means that I bring a book with me everywhere I go because I'm always early. So what is your relationship to time? What do you tell yourself about it? Then there's the big one, money. Is it a lack of funds or a lack of creativity? Can you do what you do without as much money? Can you experience life and the relationship to money differently? There is a lot of great literature out there about money and business. Jen Sincero wrote a book, You're a Badass at Making Money. I think that's a really great book for a lot of entrepreneurs to engage with. We don't know until we explore these things sometimes what our setbacks or roadblocks are. We don't know that we're telling ourselves all these negative things until we really listen. We don't know that we have an issue with time until we consider what we're saying about it. I'm too busy doesn't need to be glorified. I'm a very busy person, but I'm not too busy because I plan and I have a good relationship with time. Some days it feels a little overwhelming and other people see it as too busy. I see it as very well planned. And I enjoy having things to do. So again, that's my relationship to time. Yours may be different, and that's good. Capacity. This is probably one of the biggest words that I've been using lately. And in fact, one of my students from last semester had one of my quotes about capacity tattooed on her arm. So this has an impact. It does not matter if you have all the time and money in the world if you do not have the capacity. Right now, the pandemic takes up about half of my capacity bucket. So I'm already coming in at a deficit for my capacity. So when I'm asked to do this, this, and this, my capacity bucket gets really full. How I look at it is, okay, it's already half full and I'm putting other things in it. So to drain out some of that, I use self-care. Self-care is how I put holes in my capacity bucket to drain out some of that stuff so that I have room for more. I don't try and let it overflow. I try and use self-care to decrease what's already in there, or decrease the overwhelming feeling of what's already in there. So a lot of us right now in this world we're living in, these last couple of months, are feeling that we're at capacity. We might not use that language yet. You will after this, hopefully. But you might feel like you're at capacity and you're frustrated more easily, and you're angered more easily, and you're tired more easily because your bucket's full. Your capacity is so heightened, and then we keep doing what we were already doing, but we're not maybe engaging in enough to take care of ourselves. So then, how do you gauge your capacity? I gauge mine on exhaustion levels. If I'm exhausted, I'm at capacity. I can't do what I would normally do in the way that I would normally do it. Doesn't mean I don't do it because there's deadlines, but it means that it's not the same quality, perhaps. I really want you to consider this word. You don't all have to go out and get a tattoo of it. I might, but you don't have to. But I want you to consider that your capacity changes, right? When you have little kids, that capacity bucket is a lot more full than when you have an empty nest. You might worry differently, but your capacity bucket, your time is filled with so many more things, right? What takes up your capacity? What are you doing to help spread out the capacity ability? And then finally, stress. Do you allow stress to hold you back from making decisions or being productive, or alternatively from taking a break or resting? I just got to get it done. I just got to get it done. I just got to get it done. And instead, had you taken a 5-minute or a 5-hour break, it might have actually been done quicker because stress was causing this roadblock for you. I know sometimes I have to write something and go away from it for a whole night and then come back to it and see it with fresh eyes because I'm so stressed the night before, or I'm so stressed the day before that it doesn't even make sense anymore. The words are flying off the paper in ways that don't make sense. Is there anything else that's stood in your way or that doesn't fit into one of these topics? I see the chat going again, so that's great. Taking the time to understand your roadblocks or your setbacks is going to be so beneficial in building resilience. When we know what we're struggling with, it's easier to create change. If you're struggling with time or money or beliefs about yourself or stress or an overcapacitated life, you can create change. You can choose change, which then chooses resilience. I hope that makes sense. How does being resilient impact us? Why does this even matter? Why does this matter? It matters because Not being resilient keeps us stuck. It keeps us from experiencing joy. It keeps us from being content. It helps with optimism. And in this day and age and at different stations of our life, we need optimism. We need that. We need emotional awareness and control, empathy and connection, self-efficacy, flexible and accurate thinking. Resilience builds these capacities within us. And again, there is a really great link down there. And it talks about young people, but let's be fair. Everybody needs to understand that resilience brings these important pieces into our life. Resiliency impacts our mental health and our mental wellness. And even if there's a diagnosed mental illness, resiliency can impact that. So mental wellness, mental illness, mental health, all of that, they are different in different ways. Understand that learning to be resilient has an impact in all those areas. And it's going to impact each of us so differently. And that's important to understand. Okay, so some amazing examples of resilience. We have Anne Frank. I mean, hopefully everyone here knows who Anne Frank is. She remained strong and optimistic despite her confinement and what was ensuing outside. Bethany Hamilton, she was a surfer, she is a surfer, had her arm bitten off by a shark, continued to surf afterwards, resilient. Malala, she was shot in the head 3 times for speaking out about education for girls. Powerfully resilient. Charlize Theron witnessed her mother kill her father and went on to be a movie star. Frida Kahlo painted through her pain about her pain. Marie Curie battled sexism her entire career. This is a tiny piece of the resilient examples of women we have in the world. And these names matter because they fought racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, classism, and more. And when we face challenges, we do have choice, even when it doesn't feel like it. And that is the biggest piece of this. There's always a choice. It doesn't mean that choice is easy. It doesn't mean that choice is even possible sometimes right away. But we do have choice. And when we believe we have choice, we still have the ability to be resilient. It's when we feel we have no choices that it's very hard to be resilient. So again, these are big names. These are very well-known stories. But let's take a second and just think, who do you have in your life who's an example of resiliency? Who do you know who has gone through something and come out the other side creating change for themselves in a positive way? Who has faced a challenge and just been exceptional about moving forward? We can probably all think of at least one person in our life who has overcome challenges and made choices to overcome challenges. So we don't have to always look at people that are big names like the women I have picked. Sometimes it's just looking inside of our circle or inside of our family. Or maybe it's looking inside ourselves. Maybe, like myself, you have been resilient. It just hasn't been intentional. You've survived, what's the quote? You've survived 100% of the days so far. Was it easy? Probably not. Every day. Was it exactly what you wanted? Possibly not. But we need to understand that we have been resilient in our life, and now we can choose to be intentionally resilient in our life. I absolutely loved this illustration. Perception is the key to resilience. Do you conceptualize an event as traumatic or as a chance to learn and grow? Now, when we talk about trauma and resiliency, this is a whole other topic. And it's a personal topic. It is something that I highly recommend working with a professional on, because trauma instills a lot within us. So depending on what kind of trauma we're talking about, I don't want to minimize trauma. That's not what I'm doing here. What I want you to understand is that there still is the ability to have a different perception of what has happened in your life. I have a whole lot more stories that involve not just resiliency, but some trauma in my life as well. And for a very long time, I carried that within me, with my perception being that trauma has changed me negatively. And as I have worked through the trauma, I have come to believe that without that, I wouldn't be who I am today. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it something I wanted to experience. However, because I have, and I cannot change that, I can only change my perception of the outcome. And the outcome is I survived and I am resilient. And I choose my perception to be a chance to learn and grow. That has taken a lot of work. That is not something I woke up with and decided. It is something I decide every day, especially if things come back up, I choose it again. I have to choose, we have to choose our perception. Okay, this is why everybody's here. Let's learn about self-care. Why is self-care so important to being resilient? Because we put it on the back burner. Because when things get tough, we forget about ourselves. We power through. We'll work harder for our job or our family sometimes than we will for our own self. We cannot be resilient without taking care of who we are and how we exist in the world. If we look at the infographic there, this is back to basics. I don't necessarily agree with every moment or every, 1 to 12 being necessary for me, but that doesn't mean it's not necessary for you. We need to get back to basics. Are you drinking water? Are you hydrated? Have you eaten? Have you stretched or moved your body? And that doesn't even mean exercise. It just means, getting out of bed and releasing some of the stress from sleeping. Are you sitting up tall but relaxed? As a yoga teacher, I think this is a really important aspect of our life. Do you breathe deeply? Did you sleep for at least the amount of time you need to be refreshed? I think putting a number on it again, I try not to live by any numbers, not include sleep. But did you sleep for an amount of time that felt refreshing to you? This is a tough one, especially if you have small children, or any type of insomnia or other things that keep you awake. How's your hygiene in the last 24 hours? Have you reached out to anyone? Many people don't care about hair and makeup and clothes you like. I like comfy clothes, and I haven't done my makeup since February, but today I have mascara on just for you. It does make me feel good. I haven't needed it or wanted it. And clothes I like right now, the last couple of months have been comfy clothes. Those are the clothes I like. Have you listened to good music, podcast, or read a book? Have you been outside? Yesterday it was 6:00 p.m. and I realized I hadn't stepped outside. I had been nose deep in my books for school and doing a couple of the other things for work, and I hadn't stepped outside. And so I did. I got up, I stepped outside, I took some deep breaths, and I took a moment for myself. I stretched because I knew that that was important. Have you meditated or spent time in silence? Okay, so I do like all of these. I just might not like the numbers. We need to get back to basics. We need to be taking care of ourselves to help our capacity to do what we choose to do that means we're successful, whatever that realm is, right? Going way back to the beginning slide, what is your definition of success? If it's, I got out of bed, I washed my face, I ate some food, I drank some water, and I did my work from home in my comfy clothes, and I got outside for a couple of minutes, then try and do all those things, right? It doesn't have to be, I, started a international corporate conglomerate. It can be as simple as I got out of bed and I felt okay. For those of us with chronic illnesses, sometimes that's all we're capable of, is getting up. We have to understand our own limitations and what self-care means to impact that part of ourselves. I cannot wait to read this chat, guys. I am so excited. You guys are so engaged. And I look forward to our Q&A, which is coming up soon. Yes. Okay. So here's what I teach clients. Here is the next couple of slides are the biggest part of what I do as a counselor. And I believe it's part of what I do as a human now. And this is the meat of this presentation. We become resilient by being proactive, not reactive with our self-care. So we do self-care every day. I'll tell you how that looks on the next slide. Not just when things suck. We'll be like, oh, I've had a hard day, I'm going to have a bath. Well, what about if you had a good day? You could have a bath. You might be more inclined to read or light candles or make it really special when you're having a good day, so that when you're having a rough day, your bath is just part of the routine. Or perhaps it's calling a friend every day or texting with a friend every day to just touch base and find out how they are and express how you are. But we need to look at being proactive, and I'm gonna teach you how to do that. The perception of our circumstances is a part of healthy self-care practice. Do you see yourself in a positive way? Do you see your circumstances in a positive way or in a negative way? What are your privileges? That is something to consider for a healthy self-care practice. No matter what happens with my circumstances, I still have those privileges. I will always be white. And that is a privilege. The point of being a privilege is that I don't choose it. It just is what it is. So one of my circumstances, even if I struggled financially, would be very different if I was a person of color versus being white. And that is a sad but truth. So we need to look at our perception of our circumstances, our life, our business, our friendship circles, our partners, our children. What are our circumstances and what's our perception of that? Many of our roadblocks or setbacks will seem to impede the ability to take consistent care of ourselves. I'm going to say, put yourself on your to-do list and start creating daily practices that work for you. We don't need to be set back or blocked by those things that we talked about in a previous slide. We can create change. Change is possible. And let me reiterate that no self-care plan will look the same. I can tell you exactly what I do every day, but that doesn't matter because it's my life. It's what I need to get through what I do. But that doesn't mean that it's what you need to get through what you do. And then every single person has the opportunity to create a plan that gives you the ability to be resilient in the most difficult times. Again, it doesn't mean it's easy. Being resilient can be a challenge. But being stuck, I think, is even worse. So how do we do this? How do we even create consistent self-care practices? For those of you who have worked with me or know me personally, you'll know that I talk about this all the time. I am very authentic about this practice. I use it personally. It looks different now than it did when I started using it. I give it to every client as at their initial session, at their intake session. I do special self-care appointments with people to help guide this exact process that I'm giving to you in this next slide. Here it is. This is what consistency could look like. I believe that if we do 2 intentional minutes at a time, 4 times a day, we will be consistent. Now, you don't have to only do 2 minutes 4 times a day, but if you do 2 minutes that are intentional, you will find there's an impact. So for example, here is something that I have done for me. Upon waking, I do my physical self-care, stretch, shower, eat breakfast. Right now, it's mostly the stretch and eat breakfast. I'm showering more at night now, but that's okay. So that's my physical self-care taken care of. Around my lunch hour, I do a little bit of self-care, a mental self-care. I take a break from technology. So around lunch hour, my phone goes down, my computer gets shut. I pay attention to my food. I take a break. I might not do a word search, but I'll do something else. I might read something for pleasure that just gives my brain a nice little bit of self-care. And then around supper hour, I do my emotional self-care. I talk with my partner and my kid intentionally, being present, going way back to one of those other slides. I'm present in my life. And we're intentional about our conversations. And we have really good conversations that are emotionally fulfilling for me, which then becomes emotional self-care. And then before bed, I practice my spiritual self-care using a gratitude practice. So 4 times a day, all different elements of self-care for a couple of minutes. And the reason I say a couple of minutes is it's very hard to be intentional for long periods of time sometimes, especially if your capacity bucket's a little full. So if we can just do 2 minutes, being fully present, fully intentional with our self-care, we can start to create a consistency practice. Now, let me tell you, one of the tricks is at the very beginning, I highly recommend setting alarms. You know, do your physical self-care, do your mental self-care. Our phone can be used for good things. It can remind us that we need to do this. You could add in so many things to this type of practice. When you do physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self-care can change. What you do can change. The only thing that I highly recommend is keeping the consistency of upon waking, around a lunch hour, around a supper hour, and before bed. This works for shift workers too, because I haven't put any times on it. You notice no numbers. So these are, and they're spaced out throughout the day. So we start our day and we end our day, and we have a couple times in the middle of the day that we're just there for ourselves. So here are a couple of examples. There are so many, if you Google this on emotional self-care or mental self-care or spiritual self-care, understand that, again, no one's practice will look the same. And some of these things you're already doing, but you're not calling it self-care. So another thing that I love to do with clients is to have them talk about what they're already doing. What are you already doing that would align with one of these? And can you simply start to be intentional about it, right? So if you are already getting up and doing a shower, how could you make that shower intentional? If you're already getting up and eating breakfast, how can you make that eating breakfast intentional? If you're already journaling or listening to music you love, how do you turn that into an emotional self-care practice? Understand that you don't always have to add things in. Sometimes it's just reframing how you view things. Instead of them being a challenge or a chore, they become self-care. Okay. I just talked for over an hour. I would love, love, love to take any questions that anyone might have at this time. We have a good chunk of time here at the end. Carrie, if you want to pop, yeah, you're popping on.
There. So we've been having some great chat in the
I
chat,
see
but
pop up.
I'm going to unmute everyone. Sorry to have muted you before, but if you're not speaking right now, and again, there are some noises in the background, just take a moment to make sure that you're muted. So I have, I believe, just unmuted you all. And so it will be up to you to mute yourselves. And then, yeah, if there's any questions, I didn't see any questions per se come up in the chat. There was lots of comments, but Cassia is raring to go. And I think you are off mute. So go ahead, Cassia.
Thank you. I unmuted myself as well. I'm really excited about this presentation. It was just the sort of thing that I needed this morning. Julie, I think that you have such a great perspective on life, and be able to communicate that to other people is a gift. Mm-hmm. I want to collaborate with you, but let's talk about it. I constantly remind women how they shouldn't put themselves in a box of negative talk, especially when I style them. So that's an interest for me. And also, one thing for me that really rung true is I continually keep being busy, and I know that I do things, and I'm busy all day, and I look around and I go, oh, and then I don't remember that I've done them, and I feel like I haven't done anything all day. So we need to keep recognizing that the fact that, we prepare meals for our families, that we do laundry, that, perhaps we help a child with a homework. That is work that is contributing to the well-being of everybody else. And that self-care, that is really important. I'm definitely putting myself a manicure and a pedicure on my to-do list today. And I'm so doing it. Thank you, Julie.
Oh, Julie, you're muted. Unless you didn't want to be.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. And yes, I'll give you my contact information next, and please do reach out. Thank you.
There was a question in the chat, Julie, which is from Carrie. It's asking, not me, the other Carrie, asking what your favorite resources are. Are there any books? And I know you suggested a couple. I put the link to the John Maxwell one, I think, in the chat. Any books or podcasts, blogs, or even social media accounts that you can think of that might be useful for people to follow or to check out?
Okay. So while I was waiting for you guys to all come on, I was perusing my amazing bookshelf that I've just put together very nicely. And I have so much, depending on which aspect you're looking at. So one of some of the newer things that I've looked at is there's this book called The Year of Daily Joy. And it's a guided journal to creating happiness every day. And what I love about it is, first of all, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful pictures. Oh, look, I opened to today's page. How ironic is that? And it just gives quotes or questions, and you can just write. And I think there's something so special about looking at our life daily. And again, if you don't do it on one day, just put the year in it. Another one that years ago that I read, again, at the beginning of my entrepreneurship career, is this book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. That's a really fantastic book for entrepreneurs that I remember having quite a big impact. I also have her book, Feel the Fear and Beyond. So she's written a couple of different books. So that's a really good one. A more recent book is Shonda Rhimes' book, The Year of Yes. There's one chapter in there that I'm not a fan of, but beyond that, everything else was really, really good. This is a new book I've gotten, and I'll admit I have not read it yet, but I loved the title. Life Without Envy, Ego Management for Creative People. And I just thought, well, I think we can all use that, right? It's for artists of all stripes, navigating feelings of jealousy, frustration, inadequacy, right? I think one of the real issues with women is comparison. Oh, thank you, Carrie, for putting all those books in there. Look at this. I feel like I have a secretary. I love it. And then there's these amazing self-discovery journals. And I got these from Amazon. They're beautiful. And they were like $11. It was ridiculous. I don't even know why. I've got two. I basically have 10 years of daily things that I could do. And they're not as pretty, but they do have prompts throughout the book. And it's not dated. So it just says day 273, which I like. So it has a lot of really cool questions that just help us, again, discover who we are, what we enjoy. So those are self-discovery journals for women. They're beautiful outside. I have the Joy of Now journal. I don't know if Carrie realized what she was asking when she asked this question about how many resources I have.
I love books too, so that's why I'm writing them down, not just for you guys, for me.
Just a snippet of my bookshelf, ladies. Oh, and this question, like I just opened to it. It's not about time. How are you spending your choices? How are you spending your choices? Like it's a currency that we get to choose. Like, I mean, just powerful stuff, right? And it has all sorts of lists, and I love lists. And what do you dislike about your career? What do you love about your career? You know, really just asking us stuff that we maybe don't ask ourselves. So that is, again,
I thought that was I put that as the title, sorry. So it's not the title of a book, it's part of the previous book. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a lot. I have my pocket meditation book, which is really good. Again, it's exercises to do. There's the Little Book of Being. This is really good. And again, it's not a workbook. So these two are not workbooks. They're more like reading books, good for in the car, for when you're just look to, you know, need something to pick you up. And then, does anybody follow Tiny Buddha on any social media platform? I highly recommend them. I love, first of all, their beautiful infographics that they make, but they actually made a worry journal. And it is a creative way to let go of anxiety and find peace. And again, it is a workbook.
What's the title, Julie?
It's called Tiny Buddha's Worry Journal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And again, follow them on social media. They have beautiful infographics that I share a lot on my social media. But it talks a lot about letting go, about what's worrying us, what you cannot control, what you cannot change, all of that. So yeah, so those are the books that I had, you know, just handy, kicking around. So there's a lot of podcasts out there. I don't tend to listen to podcasts in this particular area of my life. So I don't have a lot of podcast recommendations for specifically resilience or self-care. Oh yes, and then there's all my, and I did develop an online conference on body shame that we ran last year, and we're running again this coming year. And thank you, Corey. And what I try and do is build resilience for women. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. There's lots of web pages, there's lots of stuff. What I love is when you follow one, it'll bring you other suggestions, especially on Instagram. It'll be like, oh, other accounts like this, and you can kind of see. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Any other questions from the floor? I know we have about 10, 15 minutes left.
I can stay longer.
I would like to ask a question.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Julie, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I always love hearing you speak. You're so awesome.
Thank you.
I'm just kind of going back and kind of reflecting on, you talked about some of, I guess, the characteristics of resilience, and one of them being kind of acknowledging your capacity. And that's something that, for me personally, I noticed over the course of this pandemic and kind of being isolated, that my capacity really shifted to, so for example, when I was doing my schoolwork, an assignment that would normally take me, 10, 12 hours to write in total would take me like 2 or 3 times as much, because I just didn't have that mental capacity. So I guess what I'm asking is, how do you kind of manage that in a way? Like, what are some maybe tools or tips that you might have in terms of managing that diminished capacity and being kind of kind to yourself, if that makes any sense?
Oh, definitely. So first of all, it's acknowledging that that's the truth of the matter right now, right? It's okay. So this 10%, because I'm in school too, right? So this 10% thing would take me, 2 hours outside of the pandemic, but this 10% thing is taking me 20 hours to write inside of a pandemic. So acceptance first, that sort of radical acceptance. It is what it is. We can't change that part of things. What we can do is take breaks, because if it's going to take 2 or 3 times as long to do something because of capacity, let's just take breaks. Let's say I'm going to work on this for 2 hours and then I'm going to go do my self-care for 30 minutes. Then I'll come back and I'll work on it. I think we have to take eyes off, and we have to be really, really intentional. And that's the word that I would really like to be specific about today, is the intentionality behind what we're doing is so important when it comes to that, especially during the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Intention and acceptance. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Could I ask a question as well, Carrie?
Of course, Morgan. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. That was exactly, I think, what we all needed. And I know I agree with. The chat was amazing to be following along with. But one question I had kind of was more again related to what's going on right now. And I know when the quarantine happened and I kind of had to start working from home, my work days have just been getting longer, and I seem to always be wanting to work. And I've been applaud my boss and my partner, like, wow, you're so productive. But my mental health has definitely not been on par with that. I'm drained, and just like, even when you're just sitting enjoying dinner, I'm like, oh, I could be working. Like, how could I be using this time more to my advantage? Yeah. So I thought, do you have any thoughts on how to work on those boundaries and kind of shift those perspectives? I was given the opportunity to see like a personal business coach recently, and they said, come up with a list of things you enjoy that don't relate to work. And that is very hard. Yeah, I'm just looking for kind of thoughts, or even anyone else has ideas on how to really keep those boundaries and know that the self-care is valuable, right? It doesn't have to be work is the only thing that makes my success.
Yes. Okay. So this is one of my favorite things, because as a counselor, the last thing I want to do is carry work with me. And pivoting to working at home as a counselor means I'm at home with my work. So one of the things that I think is really, really valuable for people, and I do it at my physical location and I do it here in my home office, is I have a touch point. When I turn my light off, I leave work there. So whether it's at my physical office or it's my home office, the light switch goes off and I'm done. I leave the worries, the concerns, the constraints, all of that is done. So having a specific place that you engage in work, separate from, even if it's just like a little desk that's separate, having that work is over, because you leave an office, right? Or you leave a workplace and work is over. But when we're at home, we can struggle with that. So I have the same one at work and here, turn the light off. Even when I work at Loyalist, I leave a classroom, I turn the light off. I leave my office, I turn the light off. So for me, that connection is really, really important to letting go, because we don't need to be productive, and we're going to burn out. And so I recognize that my burnout comes when I go too much. So then we have to look at, how are we going to leave work? And yes, pivoting from home is one of the most important places to implement that little bit of a strategy. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome.
And I like the idea, what you're talking about, intentionality, Julian. That might speak to what you were talking about, Morgan, is, being intentional about the things that are outside work that aren't work related. And because the hours just go so fast, you could work all day without realizing it, and then realize I have not taken a walk, or, so being intentional about things you enjoy, not that you have to force to be doing, and not feel guilty for it. I think that's important too. I think you touched on that too, Morgan. Yeah. Any other questions from the floor? I know that lunchtime is coming. Going once, going twice. I'll just reiterate that if you were coming in at the tail end of this today for whatever reason, perhaps some of you were in a different time zone, and I know when some of you signed up you were, that there is a recording available of the session today. And just before you go, just take a look in the chat, but I'm going to put my email in there one more time. It's best to just email me directly, and those of you who have attended our workshops before know that as soon as it's downloaded from Zoom, I'll flip it right back to you, and you'll have a copy of the recorded session today. But I'll let Julie close off, because I know that she wants to talk about next steps if you'd like to reach out.
Definitely. So I am so in love with reaching out with people. I love collaborating with people and talking with people. You can email me anytime. That's my email address there. Instagram, I post a lot of what I post on Facebook. So if you're on one or the other, I go by my business name, Insight to Action Counseling Services is a Facebook page. And then I have a website. The website doesn't really change much, but it's there for you to check out what the premise behind what I do on a regular basis is. So I would just love for anyone to reach out. You can have more questions, really anything. I'm open to those conversations, or if you think of something after. But yeah, Carrie will have all the slides and the recording, which I think is awesome. And then the next slide was just my resources.
And I'll just make a quick final note. I know that many of you have attended different workshops, and we just introduced a new one, which is called a virtual cafe, especially for those of you who like to chat and share your thoughts and ideas. June 23rd is going to be our first virtual cafe for women entrepreneurs, which rather than having a speaker, which we love to do and will continue to do, it rather opens up more of a virtual roundtable where we introduce a subject. And for June 23rd, it's going to be how has your marketing shifted during COVID-19, just to talk to each other. And I know that in a workshop setting, it's a little bit different because you have one expert at the front of the room, if you will. But in this case, the virtual cafe, it's going to be a bit different. So by all means, if you're not already following us on all the social media channels, we're just at We Can Queens U, and you can find us there, or email me. You have my email address, and we'll be happy to either get you on our email list so you don't miss an event in the future. And by all means, please do visit Julie and follow her. Thank you, Julie, today. Really inspiring. And I mean, that's such an overused word, but I made a couple notes about my takeaways, and you cannot hear this message enough. And I don't care if we've heard it 1,000 times, we needed it today. And we need it in a new way today. Than we needed it yesterday, and we'll need it again tomorrow. So thank you so much for that. Thank you everyone for joining us. It has been a pleasure to have you connected to us. And I hope that the rest of your day is sunny and that you've found new ways to choose resilience today. It's been our pleasure. Thanks so much. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.